Good afternoon. This is John Uveri with the North Carolina Small Business and Technology Development Center. Welcome to our webinar today that is going to focus on the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs, and we'll provide about a 30 to 35-minute overview of these programs. Introduction to the Small Business and Technology Development Center. The organization started back in 1984. At that time, the Small Business Administration on the federal side of the government started this Small Business Development Center program. And in that first year, the North Carolina legislature and the university system came through with matching funds that matched the Small Business Administration funds, and that then gave birth to the SBTDC. The SBDC program is a national program whereby each state has at least one Small Business Development Center within it. North Carolina's Small Business Development Center is and has been unique due to the fact that we have the T in the middle of our name. And that T denotes the group that I am part of, which is our Technology Development and Commercialization team. We'll talk a little bit about what the SBTDC does in general and some of the specific resources that we provide and how that technology development and commercialization team fits into our small business efforts. So we are a business extension service of the UNC system. So the University of North Carolina system has multiple extension services, including the manufacturing extension service and some others. And we're the business extension service. So again, our funds, just like they were back in 1984, are still a match between the Federal Small Business Administration and North Carolina through the UNC system. We have 16 offices across the state of North Carolina, and together these offices cover all 100 counties of the state. The orange triangle denotes our headquarters office in downtown Raleigh. We have 4 members of our technology development and commercialization team, one located in Raleigh, that's Mike Carnes, and he focuses on the eastern half of the state. Myself in our Chapel Hill office, covering statewide initiatives, and Chris Veal, who is in our Winston-Salem Triad regional office. He covers from the RTP area over to the west. And we're, at this point, identifying somebody for our Charlotte office. So some of the major services that we provide, first and foremost, we are what you would consider a general business counseling service. So general business counselors, of which there are about 40 across the state, work with all types of small businesses, Main Street stores to manufacturers to service providers, helping them to really give or help them with a very broad overview of what they have in store for their business. So things like business planning, things like marketing assistance, human resources assistance, financials, etc. In addition to general business counselors, we also have 4 special resource areas. And just real quickly, these services could, at this point or in the future, be of benefit to you. The first special resource area is called our Government Procurement Team, also known as the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. They're housed within the SBTDC. Those counselors in the PTAC group work with clients who are interested in selling finished products or services to all levels of the government, whether it be local, city, state, or federal. They work with clients to identify procurement contract opportunities and work with them through the somewhat arduous process of submitting contracts and negotiating, etc. There is the International Business Development Group, who works with clients to identify exporting opportunities, and once those export opportunities are identified, to work with them to determine all the logistics, financial requirements, financing options for those exporting opportunities. Our Marketing and Research Services unit works with our counselors internally on behalf of clients to identify sources of information that may be good for you in terms of market research reports, helping you to design primary and secondary market research initiatives, etc. And then finally, our Technology Development Commercialization team works with clients that are specifically developing novel intellectual property. Oftentimes, we'll start to work with clients that are in the early stages of development. One of the major sources of service that we can provide are identifying and strategizing about R&D funding mechanisms, equity funding, etc. And we work with those same clients through the commercialization process, the process of translating that intellectual property into a product and then strategizing about how to get out into the marketplace. So in 2012 alone, we measure all client impacts, economic and job growth impacts each year. And the clients that the North Carolina SBTDC worked with received over $100 million in debt, equity, and R&D funding, which is quite a significant economic impact that small businesses have in North Carolina. In the same year, the PTAC program, those that work with clients that are developing sales opportunities, procurement opportunities that are sold to the government, those companies received just under $120 million in contract awards. So dollars brought into companies in North Carolina are one of the major impacts that we measure on an annual basis. And the other major impact that we look at is job growth. And North Carolina companies that work with the SBTDC have a significantly higher job growth rate than companies that don't work with us. So let's move on to the SBIR and STTR programs. Talk about chocolate cake, the ends of movies, and mazes. And we'll see how each of these three pieces fit together by the end of this session. So the program description of the SBIR and STTR funding mechanisms is the following. These programs are a non-dilutive federal funding mechanism to help small businesses develop and commercialize innovative solutions to existing problems that the participating federal agencies are interested in, and the problems present significant market potential. Now here, let's break that same description into what are those key objectives that this program is all about. First, the program is non-dilutive, which means that the funding does not have to be paid back. So it's not a loan, it's not debt, and it's not equity, meaning that the federal government is not taking ownership stake in your company or any intellectual property that comes from the research. It's specifically for small businesses. So there must be a small business component to the research. The funding is to help commercialize innovative solutions. So commercialize means to ultimately sell brand new novel solutions to problems. And lastly, these problems that product or service is focused on has to have a significant market potential. And with that, the business that develops these solutions should have a strong revenue stream as a result of a large market potential. So the SBIR program is a requirement that federal agencies with over $100 million in extramural R&D funding are required to participate in this program. The requirement suggests that those agencies must put 2.8% of that extramural R&D budget aside each year. And that, this year, currently equates to about $2.2 billion available. Since the program started back in 1983, over $20 billion has been awarded to small businesses via over $100,000 different awards. Now, these programs have had a significant economic impact in terms of job growth, job creation. So companies that either have or have had SBIR funding in the past employ over 1.5 million employees. So it's likely that without this program, these companies probably wouldn't have started and therefore wouldn't exist today without the SBIR program. So lots of people are employed by companies that have started with this funding. And finally, a very important point here is that these companies that have received awards, 1 in 9 of those have gone on to attract equity financing. So companies that generally don't have early stage R&D funding associated with them are much less likely to go out and be able to attract equity financing because equity financiers are so risk averse. Whereas with SBIR money in play, companies are able to get through very high risk, high technology risk stages in their company so that after SBIR funding is used, the companies are much more credible in terms of the technology that they've developed and ultimately de-risking the company for equity investors to ultimately be attracted to. So big leveraging opportunity that the SBIR program provides. A sister program to SBIR is called the Small Business Technology Transfer Program, STTR for short. The program suggests that only the the 5 largest agencies are required to participate. They only have to put 0.35% of their budget aside into the STTR pool, and that currently equates to about $220 million. And we'll talk about the specific differences between these mechanisms and the different entities that they may fit better with. Now, keep in mind, however, that even though the STTR pool of money is only about 1/10 of the size of the SBIR pool, the competitiveness rates are about equal. So when we're thinking of, or when you're thinking about which of these mechanisms may be a better fit for you, let's use the criteria that we're going to be talking a little bit about in the next few minutes, rather than the ultimate size of the program. So the 11 agencies that participate in SBIR are noted here, and those that do not participate in STTR are also noted as being SBIR only. And you can see that based on the list here, that most of those agencies that we know of are included. They include agriculture, defense, education, energy, health and human services, transportation, environmental, NASA, National Science Foundation. So all of those big names that we know of well are represented here. And each of them offers its own kind of special areas of interest. And given that some of these agencies are quite large, they offer multiple areas of interest. So the tip at the bottom of the screen, don't judge an agency just by its name. Very important when you're thinking about which of these 11 agencies should be the target agency that I want to go after, that I want to attract funding from. Keep an open mind when thinking about who may have an interest in your area of technology. So because you can imagine that some agencies have some areas of interest that may not be obvious. For example, the Department of Agriculture has much more broad area of interest simply than farming. They have interest in wind and water and erosion control and things that you may not think of. And Department of Defense, I think, is the prime example of an agency that has such a broad range of areas of interest that you wouldn't really realize it until you start delving into that agency's solicitations. So of that $2.2 billion, here's a pie chart showing which of those agencies provide the most. DOD puts in about half of that $2.2 billion annually, so you can see that they have the largest pot of R&D money that they can pull from. NIH comes in second with about $650 million annually, followed by NASA, Department of Energy, NSF, all the way down to the smallest of them, Department of Education, which it puts in about $20 to $25 million annually. So the program, SBIR and STTR, are broken into 3 phases over a 4 to 5 year time period. It's very important to start with the end in mind. So what is the end? What's the end goal of these mechanisms? The end goal is to develop a novel, innovative product or solution that ultimately fulfills some significant agency or public need. So the end goal is a product that is going to be able to be sold and ultimately fulfill some major market need. The first phase, phase 1 of the SBIR program, provides roughly $150,000 to $225,000 for 6 to 12 months of research and development work. Phase 1, the ultimate goal of a phase 1 is to carry out R&D that will ultimately prove the viability or the feasibility or prove the concept of your idea. So that at the end of that phase 1, you will have some significant data, some significant success showing that your idea for a particular solution will actually work. Now, award rates for phase 1 are approximately 1 in 7, and that can certainly vary from agency to agency or within agencies. A lot of it depends on how much funding an agency is allocating to a particular area of interest. It can depend on what is the competition, how many people or how many businesses are applying for a particular solicitation. So it can be, 1 in 4 to 1 in 5. Best case scenario, or maybe 1 in 10. But you can imagine, you can pretty much count on 15 to 20% as being a pretty good win rate for most of the agencies and solicitations. Once you've proven feasibility, you've proven that concept that your idea will actually be a reasonable solution for a problem, you're eligible to move on to a phase 2, which requires another research proposal to be submitted and a commercialization plan to be submitted. If you're successful in receiving that funding, the award amounts can be between $1 million to $1.5 million and roughly 24 months of time to carry out that phase 2 work. Now, phase 2 work should be building upon the phase 1 results that you achieved. Okay, so phase 1 results should kind of be the foundation from which the phase 2 will be built upon. Oftentimes, a phase 2 deliverables or milestones will revolve around building out of a prototype, field testing that prototype, working the bugs out of that prototype, and then ultimately a final product hopefully will be the end goal or the end milestone of your phase 2 work. Now you can imagine that depending on the type of technology that you're developing ultimately, the SBIR funding may or may not be enough or adequate to get you to a point where you've got a finished product at the end of phase 2. Some technologies, that phase 1 and phase 2 funding is adequate to complete that product development. In other cases, such as drug development or medical devices, that phase 1 and phase 2 money is just going to be the very start of the funding that you're going to need. And oftentimes, a company will perhaps be able to get some additional government funding for the work, or in that case, they may have to go out and identify equity sources to help fund that additional work that needs to be done. Award rates for phase 2 are about 1 in 2 to 1 in 3. So you can see that win rates go up pretty drastically from phase 1 because a lot of those phase 1 awardees perhaps may not have been able to prove feasibility and weren't eligible to move on to a phase 2. So you've got a smaller pool of companies going after these phase 2s. Now keep in mind that NIH and some of the institutes within NIH have a couple of special mechanisms, one of which is what they call their direct to phase 2 mechanism. That allows companies to skip phase 1 and submit directly for a phase 2. A company may wish to do that if perhaps they've received funding from another mechanism and that they feel that they've gotten to a point where they've been able to prove feasibility and their phase 1 results are strong, and they wouldn't want to go after a phase 1 SBIR because it would just be recreating the wheel and kind of doing duplicative work. So the NIH offers a direct phase 2 mechanism. And then finally, NIH offers something called the fast track mechanism, which is submission of a phase 1 and a phase 2 at the same time. And what that program is, the benefit of is it reduces significantly that gap between the end of phase 1 funding and the beginning of phase 2. So phase 3 is all about commercialization, getting that final product out to the marketplace. This is what's very unique about this funding mechanism versus other government and academic funding projects. Most academic funding mechanisms, the goal is to carry out very strong research, garner very strong findings. However, there really isn't much of a focus on developing a pure product that will then be translated into the marketplace. Whereas this SBIR, STTR program, this is the ultimate goal, is to commercialize something at the end of the day, so that your small business will receive revenue, you'll be able to grow, create jobs, etc. And that is the return on investment from the government standpoint, is economic development and a product that will ultimately fit the needs of some problem that you originally identified. So all in one place here is this phase 1, phase 2 commercialization pathway. Again, phase 1, prove the feasibility of an idea. Phase 2, prototype development, field testing, work the bugs out, and then phase 3, commercialization, get that finished product out in the market, and revenue generation. So the next big question is strategizing about whether the SBIR or the STTR is a better mechanism for the 4-year business. So let's talk about the two major differences between these two mechanisms. The first difference of note between the two is the research partner. In an STTR, research and development that you carry out in your phase 1 and phase 2 must be a joint effort, must be a partnership between the awarded small business and a university or a nonprofit research institution. In North Carolina, one of those great examples would be RTI, Research Triangle International. In an SBIR, there's no requirement that a nonprofit research institution take part. The second difference between the two has to do with the principal investigator. That's the person that's going to be the most technically adept headline person on this project. In an STTR, the primary employment, and primary employment is defined as in terms of hours, meaning over 20 hours a week. So they look at this from a 40-hour-a-week standpoint. Primary employment in an STTR, 21 plus hours a week, can be either with the awarded small business or the partner university. In an SBIR, the principal investigator must be majority employed by the business. So SBIR, the PI must be at least 21 hours or more employed by the business. So let's look at two scenarios in which SBIR or STTR might be a better fit. The first scenario has to do with an SBIR project. Small business, again, the awarded component, the awardee of this SBIR funding, can subcontract or can partner up to 30% of the work in the phase one, okay, and up to 50% of the phase two to any business or research institution. Okay. Now, keep in mind that I just said can subcontract. They don't have to subcontract any of it if they don't want. Okay. But up to 30% in phase one, up to 50% in phase two can be partnered out to any other entity that they wish. That other entity could be another small business, could be a large business, large corporation, or a university. And again, they don't have to use any of that if they don't want. In an STTR, small business that receives the funding must partner out at least 30% of the work to a nonprofit research institution. An additional 30% can be outsourced to any entity that they wish. It could be to that same university, to another small business, large business, it doesn't matter. Or they don't have to use that second 30% at all. And that leaves a minimum of 40% of the work that must be done at the business. So the tip at the bottom of the screen, subcontracting or partnering can be a very strong component of your proposal because it shows to the reviewers that you're bringing in outside expertise. You might be bringing in equipment, facilities, etc., that your small business doesn't necessarily have access to on its own. So it's often a very good idea strategically to think about what are the weaknesses within our business, whether it be from a team standpoint or a facilities and equipment standpoint, and think about who can we bring onto the project in phase one and a phase two that would help to strengthen kind of the visual appeal of our business from a team and facility standpoint. There are some eligibility checkpoints that the small business must pass to be able to be eligible for receiving SBIR or STTR funds. The first checkpoint is that that business must be for-profit and it must be headquartered in the United States. Second point is that that small business must be at least 51% owned and independently operated by U.S. persons. And to be considered a small business, the Small Business Administration defines a small business as having under 500 people in size. Now, keep in mind that over 50% of all of the SBIR and STTR awards made generally go to businesses with under 10 people in size. So this is truly a mechanism that is benefiting the true small businesses in our country. You may think that, well, why aren't companies that have 495 people submitting lots of these grants? It would seem like they have everything in place and they could easily be winning a lot of these awards. Well, that can be true. However, most businesses that have a significant size probably also have some significant internal research funding mechanisms that they can pull from. So it is truly those small players, the small R&D companies that take most advantage of these mechanisms, which is exactly what they were designed to do. So at the SBTDC, our group, our technology development and commercialization team, is here to guide you through this SBIR STTR maze. It really is a maze when you have not gone through the process before. There are a lot of pieces, a lot of parts, a lot of people that you need to communicate with. And really, without some guidance, it takes a lot of legwork to be able to understand how to be successful in this program. So one of the major things that the SBTDC, and specifically our technology group, can provide you with is one-on-one counseling. So we are able to meet with you either in person, by phone, we're there by email to answer questions. But one of the major goals, first and foremost, of our one-on-one counseling efforts is to really analyze what is your SBI or STTR strategy. Does this fit with the timeline of your business and of your go-to-market strategy? Given that it is, a 3 to 4 or more year process, does that make sense for your business and your technology development needs? We help to think about the commercial goals. What is that product that you want to develop? What are the goals for you, or what is the strategy for you and your business to get this product out in the marketplace? So there are many different mechanisms for you to get a product out in the market. It could be either going it by yourself, it could be partnering with another company, it could be licensing, or just simply selling off your intellectual property. So there are many different mechanisms. It's really good to start thinking about that early on. Where do we want to go in 4, 5, 6 years from now? Good to know now. We're available to review proposals. So as you're developing a phase 1 or a phase 2 proposal or a commercialization plan or a business plan, we're here to review that as you're developing it, and really able to provide an outside look at the content that you're preparing. So the more people that you can bring on, whether it be technical experts or us at the SBTDC in terms of business expertise, the more eyes that you can get on these documents, the better they're going to be. And we ask that any companies that work with us, especially when you're going after a deadline-oriented SBI or STTR deadline, that you start working with us early. We're much more effective in terms of working with you and providing guidance if you start working with us a few months before a deadline, as opposed to coming to us a couple of weeks before a deadline. So the earlier, the better, the more value that we can provide you. And then finally, the icing on the cake is that North Carolina, through the One North Carolina Small Business Program, offers a match. Through the North Carolina Board of Science and Technology and Innovation, there is this fiscal year $1.5 million that's been allocated to this One North Carolina Small Business Program. That program enables phase 1 awardees that are North Carolina based the opportunity to receive up to a $50,000 match. And the beauty of this funding is that just like the federal SBI or STTR money, it's non-dilutive and it doesn't have to be paid back. But even better, this state funding can be used for business-related expenses, whereas the federal money must be used specifically for research and development. The state money can be used for things like helping to prepare a market research report, helping to cover intellectual property costs, patenting, etc., helping to hire business attorneys or business accountants. So with the Phase 1 and the Phase 2 money plus the North Carolina match program, it's a significant amount of money that really helps to spearhead and ignite the development efforts within small businesses. Now keep in mind that this match program must be reauthorized and refunded by the state legislature on an annual basis. So until each year's state budget is finalized, it's not known if this program will be alive for the next year. So for this current fiscal year, the end of the fiscal year is June 30th, and then once the state budget is finalized for fiscal year 2016, we'll know if this will be around for next year. But we're keeping our fingers crossed and certainly positive that it should be refunded for 2016. So key takeaways from this presentation as we close up here. Both programs, SBIR and STTR, are the largest non-dilutive R&D funding mechanism specifically set aside for small businesses in the entire world. No other country has a funding mechanism specifically for R&D with commercial goals than this. SBIR versus STTR, it's important to strategically choose the program based on what the primary employment status is of the principal investigator, and of course how much work needs to be done at the business and at a partner university, and engage the SBTDC early. Now, if you are interested in proceeding with learning about what the interests are of those 11 agencies, you can follow up with me directly at my email address, sbir@sbtdc.org, and I can follow up with you regarding what are those next steps that you need to follow in terms of identifying solicitations and identifying the different deadlines across all of those 11 agencies, how to go about communicating with program managers at each of those agencies so that you are in as strong a position as possible to be able to be submitting competitive proposals. So happy to take any questions that you may have right now using the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. Submit questions. And if not, I certainly invite you to shoot me any emails directly after this. So if you'd like to submit any questions, please feel free to do so here